Welcome everyone to the first module of the advanced teachings, the grandmother's teachings. They are very excited to have these teachings released and to be continued, and they're particularly excited to see you all again. They know who's sitting in this circle. I already knew who was coming to this circle well before probably you signed up. We already knew. So I'm going to say to you, first up, congratulations, hearing the call once again, and in particular to deepen the lessons and the learning. And on that note, I'm just going to do an acknowledgement to country, to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which all of us are sitting, no matter where we are in the world. Those lands were cared for and looked after since the beginning of time. And on this country, we say, this was the first place. And so I welcome you to the teachings from the oldest continent in the world, from Australia. And we acknowledge all of the elders on this call, all the elders past who looked after country, the elders currently with us now, and the elders into the future. And we also pay our respects to the spirit of the land on which all of us are sitting, the spirit of the land that is Mother Earth, whose teachings these are. They emanate from her, through the grandmothers, into the celestial realm, because she is a celestial body, as we all are. And it's lovely to see you all again. I feel like we're old friends in a new circle, if you know what I mean. So happy to have the opportunity to bring through more of the teachings, and particularly to my co-hosts, who on each week we're going to have a different person who's going to present with me. Today we have Imogen, beautiful Imogen, who's going to do a presentation on, well, really the theme is the dreaming. The dreaming is the dreaming of this entire advanced course. We're going to bring you into the dreaming, and we will start that with me speaking about it after I've opened the circle. I'm just waiting for the last couple to come in. And what the grandmothers have said, I thought I was going to be doing a session on dreaming tracks today because I didn't get to that in the last course. That's actually more important than the song lines, but it's different. And so it's kind of good to have it a different. Now, what they told me though yesterday is that no, we want you to present this throughout the entire course, throughout this advanced course, so that you all come on board and get a sense of what it's like to be in the dreaming. And so that's the theme, but we will have different people presenting. We have Imogen today on the bush medicine. We'll have Latina, I think might be next week, looking at the whales song, the messages of Lemuria, and all things whales, basically, the oceanic consciousness. Then we'll have Seth, I believe. Seth might be the week after. Hi Seth, he's in San Francisco, is it?
Vancouver.
Oh,
yeah,
God. Yeah. Vancouver. Sorry. I love Vancouver. I'm not so keen on that. Anyway, Vancouver, sorry, my apologies. So beautiful. And Seth will be taking us through sonar healing, using the sonic frequencies of the universe. So I'm very excited to be looking forward to that. And it'll be his thing. So it's all around healing and using sound in that capacity. My goodness, all of us are going to be required to be in that capacity, if not yet, very, very soon, as this world wakes up to the illusion that we have been under. More at the curtain is parting and the reality is appearing. And so how we might help people to transition through that is through any number of these healing modalities that we're presenting. Certainly the sound is very, very important. We'll have Adriana sharing about, I don't know if she's on here yet, there's a whole pile of you coming in. Adriana is a dear sister, and her expertise is in the crystals and the crystalline grid, and she'll share with us that actually there are 7 grids. I got it wrong, not 7 crystalline grids, 7 grids that we actually work with. And I've introduced you, the grandmothers actually have introduced you to 4, I think. So we'll have a look at that. And then we'll have a session with Dr. Nikki around the bush medicine essences, or the bush essences, not medicine, bush essences that she works with, but she's actually a holistic naturopath who works with, just like Imogen, who works with the plants and the flower essences in a particular way. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll finish up on the dreaming in the, I hope I've remembered everybody, in the dreaming of the overall concept, and feel for you to feel that you've come into the dreaming. So on that note, I'll just ask you to, any more housekeeping before I open the circle. You all know, because you've been here before, that we'll take questions along the way, because I like it to be interactive. But I think for the sake of the presenters who've got something ready, we'll let them present, and any questions we'll ask at the end, unless the presenter requests it. We'll build on each week's teachings. Much depends on the building the consciousness of this group. I'm so excited to see you all again. I needed this as much as you did. I think I've said everything. Oh, if you've missed a session, you know that it'll be recorded and it'll be available. We'll make it available, of course, for the whole week that it's coming, but really to try to build up the consciousness of this circle. That is, and particularly if we're lifting you into the dreaming, I really need you to be on song with us. Don't let it go. If you've missed a week and then you turn up and think, oh, I've your vibration affects the vibration of the whole container. So I'm asking you to, I suppose, commit to making sure that if you haven't made it to the live session, that you will, hand on heart, review and go with the teachings at some stage in the week. We'll have a ceremony each week. So at the end of it, I'll take you through a ceremony, more like a healing meditation, but bringing it all together of whatever it is. And I won't know that until the time, because the grandmothers will guide me. It will guide you through me. So buckle up. The teachings are an energy transmission and a healing for you. And I just say to you to allow yourself to be washed over like a waterfall that has a minimum 85,000 year stamp on it. But really the waterfall comes from the dreaming, the waters of the dreaming, since time immortal. There is no time, space, dimension. We're all one when we come into the dreaming. And on that note, I'm now going to open the circle. And so I'm just going to call on the grandmothers and the divine circle, divine council of the grandmothers and the great grandmothers, I'm being told. I've got to bring them into the great grandmothers. We're calling on the star beings and the celestial realm who love us unconditionally, who support the grandmother's teachings for those of us here on planet Earth from wherever we have come. We call on Mother Earth and the spirit of the land, the sacredness of the elements of fire, earth, air, water, and ether. We call on Nana Violet, keeper of the law of one. And I call on my elders. I call on Uncle Ken, the last of our lawmen, my uncle, grandfather. And I call on your ancestors from the lineage that you've come through, from your spiritual home, the ancestors from your spiritual home, to that come through you, that walk with you to come now to the circle. I call on your totems. We call on our beloved animals, birds, insects, all life, rocks, minerals, crystals, waters. We call on them all, and the essence of life vibrating at a high frequency to call in the highest consciousness of all there is. The great creator from the great galactic sun. We call you in, we call on by him. And we call on the dreaming, the spirits of the dreaming beings to come through now. And may we all enjoy each other's company as we lift into the dreaming. Nanga, nanga, nanga. I didn't have to call in the directions because it was like there was no direction. It was all very interesting. So just a reminder that the grandmothers are not necessarily human. They represent all forms of life, all planetary experience, the in-between and the interdimensional beings. They are in all of us, for they have seeded us onto this planet. And I now welcome Imogen to speak about the flower energy, because the flowers know the proper relationship of things between spirit and earth. They'll become very significant, if not already, as teachers of this new dreaming, of this new healing to help humanity. And now I'm just going to bring up the share screen. While people are coming in. There we go. So Imogen, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Well, it's morning where I am in Australia. I know you can't see me, but we're going to today use my story to travel into the dream time.
You can see you, by the way. You're on the side.
Can see me? Okay. Oh, good. So I have to introduce myself to you in a proper way so we can step into my story and travel hopefully to this place, and from here we will be able to enter the dream time. So my name is Imogen, and in the everyday world I work as a psychologist, and I'm also trained as a herbalist, and I combine these two practices in a healthcare practice, which I deliver healthcare to my neighbourhood. But my story starts a long time ago when I was in Brisbane in Queensland, Australia. And my great-grandmother was an Indigenous woman who had to surrender her Indigenous status. And I've spent most of my life trying to reconcile the parts of me that belong to the white world and the parts of me that belong to the Indigenous world. And this place, which I'm going to show you now, is a lake that is on a place called Fraser Island, which is a big sandy island. The traditional custodians of the island are the Bachula people, and I have not spoken with them about me yet, but I hope to one day. Now, this lake is called, in English, it's called Lake Mackenzie, but its traditional name is Burungura. So we're going to dream into this lake a little bit. This is where I first learned how to enter the dream time when I was a very small child. I would have been under the age of maybe 18 months, my first memory of being in this lake. My father was not able to claim his Indigenous status and became very depressed living in Brisbane City. And in the end, he became very unwell. He used to take us to Fraser Island and got relief from these symptoms. And when we were there, Fraser Island is a very alive place. The elders are still there. And you can feel the presence of the ancestors. So now we're going to enter the dream time by walking into this lake. The outside of the lake, as you can see, is white sand. And when you stand on this part of the lake, you feel comfortable. You feel like you know where you are in time and space. You feel solid. But as a small child, I swam across where you can see the line between the white sand and the black sand. And as you cross that line, it feels like you're falling down a hole when you're a little kid because you don't have a great sense of space. And this is how the mind works. There's a part of you that's me, that lives in the everyday world. And there's a part that lives, let's call it the dreaming. There's a part of you that you can't access consciously. It's called the not me part of you. And this line exists where the ocean meets the shore, and also, as you can see on this lake here. So imagine swimming in the water, and you're only coming across to where the white sand becomes the black sand. As you cross that line and keep swimming, it becomes very scary. You feel like you're falling down a hole. But when I first did this as a small child, I heard the lake speak to me, and the lake articulated exactly what I've said to you. This is the part that we know. This is the part that we don't know. Both parts are known by me. And all this, so the lake said, swim across the line. And then she said, or he, it's hard to know which gender, put your feet down and stand up, which I did, of course, and I felt safe again. But I was really uncomfortable being on the black sand, really. So I kept going back to the white sand. So the lake told me to do it again. And I kept doing it until I felt comfortable. And then the lake said, now hold yourself in the water and look through the water. And the lake said, when you can comfortably move from one side to the other, the dream time is like the water. I'm not explaining this very well. It's very hard to explain in English. So you got to imagine how it feels. So we're on the white sand. Yep, solid. I know what the hell's going on. Now something tips me across the black sand and I feel like I'm falling. And you keep going backwards and forwards until you can be in the water. And you can be with both sides at the same time. That is the feeling that you need to adopt to be able to enter the dream time. So you start sensing how the water feels. And this place is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, this lake. So eventually, when I met my lovely husband, I took him, of course, to the places I know is home, and I've been raving about this lake. I carry this lake with me everywhere, and it's a brilliant teaching tool for entering the dream time. Anyway, we went to the lake, beautiful day, hot as it is in Queensland, and my husband said to the lake, because this lake will talk to you if you talk to it, why does my wife like this lake so much? And the lake said, because there are no predators here. And the water has a particular pH, which means fish and other things, it's hard for them to live in the water. It's crystal clear. It's just the most beautiful place ever. But that line you can see between the white sand and the black sand, it symbolizes so many things in learning how to enter the dream time. So you have to kind of be able to move your mind as if you were sitting in the water. So we're neither me or not me. We're kind of both, and we're moving fluidly through the water. Okay. How are we going? Can we have the next slide, Grandma? Okay, now that's so we just were at a spirit of place. Now I'm going to talk very briefly about a spirit of being. So everybody who's working on healing has some allies, some spirits that will try and help you with your work. And the black swans are, you could call them a totem. They're a medicine that tries to work with me and I try and work with them. Black swan dreaming, learning about how animal medicine works, you dream into the essence of what it feels like to be that animal, and you get a sensation, information in sensation. And black swan dreaming is about dialogue, building relationship, building community, and dealing with conflict. And this is how you do it. You copy what the black swans do as they court each other. So the swans come up to each other and they move around each other. They don't attack, they don't lean on, they don't dominate. They just speak. The idea is you speak your truth and stop and listen and let the other one speak their truth until they're finished and stop. And you go back and forth. And through this process, it's like the white sand talking to the black sand, and learning how to get in relationship with them, getting into right relationship with it's conflict. I'm not explaining this.
No, this is really good. No, you're doing very well.
It's tricky. It's tricky to translate the
It is.
Stream time talks in essences, in sensations, in feelings. It talks. It doesn't so much talk in words. The white sand part of your mind, the bit that's me and solid, that likes words and logic and rationalism, and it helps you problem solve things you can grab and see. But there's a whole lot of stuff happening in the background that sadly the white culture I grew up in, and certainly a lot of psychology, ignores. Right. So what are we going to move on to today?
Can I just say here,
yeah,
if I may give you a moment?
Yeah.
That, so here the Black Swan dreaming is a dreaming track.
Right. Good.
So in the dreaming, and that's my part of the teaching, that's all right, not yours, is that we have a totem that we're most familiar with, or we will become that we become the essence of that totem in our life. Mine is the white whale, and Gutty, which is Fraser Island, is white whale, by the way. So that really speaks to me. And I just share here, and I'm really appreciative of Imogen, because she's actually stellar in this knowledge, this Indigenous knowledge, that the Black Swan is a good example for Imogen to follow that dreaming track. And she's just explained how it works from a swan perspective. It's really interesting, the dance of this black swan. And that dreaming track could go right across Australia, could go right across the world, but I'll come back to that. But just for now, just know when we talk about a particular dreaming, so here Black Swan dreaming, it actually is, there is a, it's more than a teaching, it's actually, there's a track that creates a landscape. I think we'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you, Imogen.
Thanks, Grandmother. It's hard to explain this, because I use this medicine in my work. I'm dealing with a lot of conflict all the time, but I also have a lot of internal conflict, because I'm carrying the stories of my ancestors. I'm carrying the stories of my great-grandmother, who lived through a lot of violence in her life in order to have children and raise them and then have children. So the stories have passed right down to me. So my life, I have to follow the path of a healer, because otherwise I will not survive. And it's an ongoing journey of retrieving parts of me and integrating them and building that bridge between the white sand and the black sand.
And so appropriately, the dreaming is a creation story. It's how we sing things into reality. That's a dreaming, and the dreaming can be in our heart. So in your heart, as an example for the class, there is a wish, for the white culture and the black culture to come together and to do the healing. And the swan dreaming, in this case, Black Swan dreaming, is a beautiful way of doing it, because the black is showing the way. And that is the new dreaming prophecy, is that we bring back the old law in a new way. In Australia, we call it, that's the black law, for the black Aboriginal lines that came down. But there are also red Aboriginal, white Aboriginal, yellow Aboriginal, whatever. So the black is is symbolic of our old country and of leading the way. And it's a beautiful thing, because of course we know there are white swans. So how they dance together is an incredibly important, potent teaching, but also it's what we can learn and how to be that in our lives. And I thank you, Imogen, for sharing your vulnerability about the black swan and about the coming together, the new creation story. The new dreaming is a new creation story of how to work with both. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandmother. So I'm hoping today to show you how, or remind you more, you already know this actually, but most children talk to the world as if it's conscious. And I'm hoping to excite you and delight you to discover that the world is actually exactly like you were taught in fairy tales. It really is. There really are mythical, magnificent beings. There are scary beings. Plants really can talk. So can animals. But in order for you to hear them and interact like that, we need to get to the part where you're water, like the water in the lake. You've got to sort of dream and imagine your way back into feeling like you're in a ocean of consciousness, I suppose. But in the scientific community in the Western world, I think the morphogenetic field is the closest scientific construct to what the Dreamtime actually is. But the Dreamtime is in Australia. It's been cared for and nurtured and loved for a long time, but it's also all over the world. And today I'm hopefully going to introduce you to some plants who can help retrieve this way of seeing the world. And plants are like incredible books that have huge knowledge on what it means to be human and how to live and how to create realities and all sorts of fun stuff. But before we go on to that, can I have the next slide? Okay, so this is another teaching place. It's very close to the coastline of Fraser Island. It's called Rainbow Beach, and as you can see from the picture, there are coloured sands, and it's also called the coloured sands. And I have a story which is probably a Bachula story, but it's accessible on the internet, so I'm going to read it to you. Because places carry records and of ancient information, and the stories that are linked to the place unlock wisdom. So I'm going to give you a quick example of, it's a very short story, and I'll just read it now. Story of Rainbow Beach. It is believed that Mulara, who was a very attractive Aboriginal maiden, would enjoy the rainbow arriving every evening, and later fell quite in love with this. Bawilla, who came from another tribe, not this area, not me, turned out to be an evil man with bad intentions, and he stole Mulara away. She became lucky one day and made an escape from the nasty Burrawilla and ran as fast as she could along the beaches. Bawilla was chasing her with his killer boomerang, and it was then that Mulara saw the rainbow appear and try and save her. A huge fight erupted, and brave Rainbow took on the killer boomerang in order to save Mulara from her fate. It was then that a big collision occurred in the air, and the killer boomerang would die instantly. Rainbow was destroyed into a billion particles, and finally coming to an end upon the shores in the dunes, which is where the beautiful colours of Rainbow Beach are now seen and admired by people across the world. This story saved my life. And this story is an ancient story, and I heard it as a small child, and it taught me how to retrieve a relationship with my ancestors, with the spirit of place, with the spirit of animals, with the spirit of plants. It taught me so much about ancient law that saved my life. And we don't have enough time to explain what that means exactly, but there were bad Burrawilla forces after me. And the rainbow was one of the things that helped me escape. Okay, let us move on now from this sad story.
Well, we all might recollect from module 1 of the whole entire course, our story about rainbows.
Yes.
And how it's important to check the health of a rainbow. Just as important to recognise that it can save your life.
I better tell you one more story about this place. This is a personal story. So my father used to take us bush a lot because I think it partly made him feel better, and it was great because we got to get taught by the ancestors. Anyway, we were driving along Rainbow Beach one day, and my dad thought we'd get out and go and have a look. So we climbed up to the top of the sand dune, and the colours are really striking. They're really, you want to grab them, touch them, and you want to kind of eat them. It's a strange feeling, but of course you can't eat sand. And Dad took a big bucket of the sand, and I immediately felt the ancestors go, don't do that. But my father was, you know, he was caught in the white person's story. Dominance was a big part of it, the way he related to the world. I would have been about 5 or 6, and I said, "Oh, Dad, you know, you can't do that. Shh, be quiet." You know, it was played out the white person part of the story. So we got in the car and kept going, and I could feel the consequences of removing the sand. It feels like a massive weight on your shoulder. And Dad and myself were looking at each other through the window of the rear vision mirror. And without saying anything, after about 5 minutes, he turned around and drove the car back, quickly put this out. I said, "You have to take it up where you took it from." And he just, shh. So you can really feel something in the water, in the atmosphere. And it's a real thing. Anyway, all righty, let's move on.
I can feel the strength of that just from the picture. And I'm sure that others in the course here in the circle can feel that too. Thank you. Thank you.
It's just an example of how the land talks, how it can talk to you anywhere. I've been all over the world, and I know that the land is alive everywhere. It might be a bit more loud in a place like Rainbow Beach, but the land is alive everywhere and has stories and ancestors hidden in it. Okay, we better go to the next slide. We better go. Okay, now this is a picture from the Western world, and it's called the flammarian etching, and the artist is anonymous. It was published in 1888 in a book. The reason I put this picture up is it's the only image I've ever found in the Western world that captures that nexus point, the line between the white sand and the black sand of what can happen when you grow and develop yourself and unfold your process to the point where you've built a bridge between the white and the black part of the part that's me, the part that's not me, and you can see into the dream time. So I just thought that would be a nice little, I know it's weird. I think Jung put it on the front of his books a long time ago. Okay, so we're going to talk about, here's the rose, woo. So we're going to talk a little bit about, in the Western world, the closest tradition I could find in my travels of the transformation of consciousness necessary to see into the dream time is the story of the alchemists, the pursuit of the philosopher's stone, trying to make the elixir of life. It's a mythical, thrilling idea, and it's been around for a long time, the pursuit of trying to make them the perfect medicine. And it's something that fascinated me a lot when I was younger. So to make the philosopher's stone, you have to, the process is basically separating out something called an essence, mercury, sulfur, and salt. And the salt part of you is like the physical body you have. The mercury part of you is like the thing that joins the white sand and the black sand. And the sulfur part of you is like an essence. It's an intangible thing that the alchemists tried to purify, they tried to separate these things out, purify them, and then rejoin them. And all alchemists are philosophers in the sense that they're philosophers of nature. They try and observe nature and what nature does, because nature makes gold, purifies things. They developed methods by watching how rain is made and hypothesizing that it's a condensation process. It gets transferred, you get transformed into vapor, then condensed into water, and then rain comes and it goes around again. And this was their idea, was this is how you purify yourself to achieve the philosopher's stone and make the medicine of life to become immortal. That was what they really wanted. So good herbalists think like philosophers, but they practice like mechanics. And in the landscape I articulated with the lake, what you're trying to do is become the water. The equivalent would be purifying your understanding of you, purifying and being with the understanding of the part of you that's not you, until you can see the not you as me as well. And then at that point you become water. That would be the kind of equivalent. So along the way to becoming water, a trick of how to integrate these parts of you to become whole would be to take the assumption that whatever you can see in the world must be somehow me, even though it feels like it's not me. And your challenge is to practice, to explore, to examine, to chew on until you can connect to that thing as if it was me. That's how we put ourselves back together.
Straight away, yeah. I can see the Fibonacci sequence.
Oh, the roses.
Before. That's what we're made up of, and the rose is a perfect example of how that's forming. The Fibonacci.
Roses are an awesome medicine because they show pretty easily how you can use plants as a medicine. So you can take it physically as a tea, cream, even I suppose you could probably chew it, make it into a jelly. Roses are really cooling on a very basic examination of how the medicine works. But when you smell a rose, everybody knows what a rose sounds like. You start to tap into the essence of roses. It's an intangible something that your mind has to imagine. Roses are awesome heart healers. And the image, the logo I've got on here is the logo for my practice. It's supposed to have all the colors of the rainbow, plus the rose. So roses are one of my allies, and I thought I might use the rose as a quick example of just how diverse using a plant as a medicine can be. You can taste the herb. Roses taste. Turkish delight's often flavored with rose water. It's a hard to describe taste. It's kind of once you've tasted it, you would never forget it. It's almost lemony, but not quite lemony.
I reckon we could conjure up the taste of a Turkish delight.
Plants also have symbols, and when you become very in deep relationship with a plant, they will show you a representation of a symbol. And what Grandmother kind of saw what it is. It's a little bit like the representation of the sacred geometry that makes up a rose, the structure of a rose. But roses have songs. If the rose teaches you a song, you can heal someone by singing that song to them, and you can heal yourself as well.
Nice.
So when you're starting to learn how to sing the song of a rose, you're getting very close to the essence medicine, which is the water, the medicine that lives in the water, the water being a metaphor for the morphogenetic field, being a metaphor for the dream time. So that when Aunty talks about singing up song lines and dreaming up dreaming paths, this is kind of what we're talking about. And the rose is just an awesome, accessible plant because everybody loves the smell of a rose. When you smell the rose, you can feel your heart opening, and that's exactly what that feeling, the plant shows you what it can do. But rose has lots of things to teach, man. So how do we take plants as medicine? So the alchemists tried to purify things, and then you might even say that the activity of making alcohol or wine is an alchemical process. Distillation itself is a purification and an alchemical process. So you can soak the herb in alcohol or water or honey. You can burn or smoke herbs, but you can also make something interesting called the flower essence. And flower essences are made by water in a bowl, hopefully spring water, hopefully some spring water you've collected yourself or whatever. Stick the flower petals in the water and let the sun shine on it. And the sun will leave a memory imprint on the water, and the imprint is as close to the essence medicine as you can get. So the way herbs work as medicines is you have a song as well. Every single person who was ever created has a song. And if you can learn to sing your song, the idea is you'll be whole and healthy and the most strongest expression of who you are. But things happen in life, sadness, difficulties, ancestral stories that are not resolved happen. and little chinks can come out of your song. You can go a little bit out of tune. You can even lose parts of yourself as well. So plants can fix that. And sometimes their song can tune you back in. So you can take the song by singing it, or having a tea, or smelling the rose. That you might just need a rose stuck to your nose for all the time. I would like that, actually. I would really like that. Okay.
Can I also just add a little?
Yeah.
This is fabulous information from an expert. It's wonderful. I'm going to add a little more. I'm going to say the Nunkery healers. So,
Yes.
and the Nunkeries are our traditional healers, traditional way. If something was wrong with your heart, right?
Yep.
And they're hands-on healing. If something is wrong with your heart, what they would envisage is a rose.
Yes.
And they would put a rose into your heart.
That's exactly what you do. Yeah, wow. That's sophisticated, and some of that's a bit secret, but you start with the tea and then the
plant. Advanced class.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, if you make friends with the plant, the rose is pretty friendly. Like, Rose is keen to be friends with everyone. Rose of the world, like Rosa Mundi means rose of the world. It's she will in time teach you the song and the symbol, and you're right, you can direct it over distances. It's just a little more efficient than having the actual plant. It works just well. Yeah. And
one more little tip: if you've got a rose garden and you've got kangaroos around, you're going to have to somehow change that, because they like roses. Will eat the roses, as will the alpacas, as will the other animals. They love roses.
Everyone loves roses. They're awesome. All right. So
next one.
What is the next one? Let's have a quick look at that. Okay, so this is, you have to read all this. This is just a quick example of how herbalists work. So human beings are, you could call us open systems. What that means is we've got a bit of structure, but we're an open system. We have semi-porous skin, which means we take in information and we absorb it, and we have a structure. You could call that consciousness, the part of you that's the white sand, the I part. And we also have the capacity to learn. When we're learning, our system goes into a little bit of chaos, and then it automatically reconfigures to absorb that new information. That's called learning. And as a result of that, our systems go into semi-chaos all the time, because we're constantly taking in information, dealing with new things, moving through life, trying to handle problems. Now, this part's hard to explain. So when somebody has a symptom, it's like I'm going to use metaphor here rather than saying this is a fact. So it's like each one of us has a blueprint, an essence blueprint that exists in the water part of the lake. And there is a mysterious observer, someone who's watching you, who might live in the black part of the lake. Who knows? We don't know exactly. And when they perceive your potential, you kind of collapse into physicality. But you can collapse imperfectly when you get observed. And it's you doing the observing of yourself. It's just you observing yourself from the position of the black sand. So if you are observed imperfectly, so say like you got 80% of yourself expressed, but the 20% of yourself remained as a potential, the way your system compensates for that is it creates symptoms to help remind you, like, you forgot about this part of me. I don't know how easy that is to imagine, but symptoms have meaning. They're not just annoying, although they are to your everyday self. So herbalists kind of think about three basic disorders. There's a disorder of assimilation, a disorder of elimination, and disorder of replication. That can be reproduction in terms of having a baby, or it can be like cellular regeneration or repairing tissue. So how do we assess? How do herbalists assess? Plants have evolved alongside us, and we've known them forever, ever since the beginning, whenever that was. So the way herbalists assess, before we had computers and tools and, catalogues and large banks of information, is we had to use our senses, the same senses that you use to perceive the dream time. And it's a little bit like looking at terrain in the world. So you can have hot, damp, relaxed or slack, cold, dry, and tense. And this is and they're basically 3 categories: temperature or metabolism, moisture, and tone. And then they've got 2 qualities. So herbs also reflect, or plants, when you taste them, when you eat them, you can see what category they fall into. And it's a very simple prescribing system. It's like you have a look at the body of the person, you have a look at how hot or cold it is, how moist or dry it is, and how tense or relaxed it is. And then you choose a herb to rebalance the situation. That's pretty much what you do. Right. It's like assessing a terrain. You're trying to bring balance. You're trying to return the system to balance. You can get very creative about that. All right. Let us move on to the next slide. Okay. Now, this is an alchemical idea. The doctrine of signatures. It's based on the idea or the assumption that there is a creator that's intelligent, a creative force that loves human beings. And that there are food types that look like body parts. So if you have something wrong with your body part, you have this food and it will help. And it's a bit like eating an archetype. So what have we got? We've got tomatoes that look like the chambers of a heart. We've got carrots that look like an eye. And we've got walnuts that look like a brain. And celery is really helpful for bone healing, because it changes the mineral balance in the body so that it makes it more able to repair, lay down cartilage and calcium. Anyway, you can read about that and see if you believe it or not. Of course, the beetroot regulates heartbeats. How helpful. And bananas, well, I'll leave that to your imagination. The grandmothers have a cheeky sense of humour, and they're going to attempt to crack a joke, and let me try not to muff this up. So if we could have the next slide. So figs are the most convincing fruit for this particular doctrine.
Very good.
And if anyone has ever held a ripe fig, you'll know what I mean. Righto. They're very cheeky, because you'll absolutely be convinced. You're like, what? Because sometimes the doctrine of signatures is not how it looks, but how it feels. Okay, let's have a look. There is I haven't got a photo of this, but there's a weed that grows near where we are. It probably grows all over the world, called cat's ear or sow thistle. Sow's ear thistle. If you touch this flower, it doesn't look like a cat's ear, but it bloody feels like one. Like, you absolutely think you're touching the cartilage of a pig's ear, or like you know how cats have got that cartilaginous ear, that it feels exactly like that. It doesn't look, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Here's another example. I remember in my pursuit of trying to observe nature and understand, because nature is the best healer, I was thinking to myself, well, how do you boil a perfect egg, right? If you don't have timers, or you don't have, saucepans or whatever. So I thought, okay, the simplest way, because you know how water has a stable boiling point, it's one of those yardsticks we all depend on. So I thought, well, okay, here's the way I would do it. You get your egg you boil the water, bring it up to a boil, and then turn the heat off and let the water cool. And that is the essence of cooking an egg. It's like there's a whole system of creation. If you look deeply into it enough and get to the essence of what you're observing, you find the original archetype, which sometimes is needed to heal. Okay, we've done all the doctrine of signatures. Okay, this plant. Now this is not the first plant I learned, but this plant's got a very clear doctrine of signatures. Solomon seal. It's not an Australian plant, but plants aren't worried about nationality or where they come from. They just want to get involved. So this plant looks like, what does it look like? It looks like a spine to me, with nerve endings coming out of it. And spinal problems in human beings are big, and they're complicated usually. They're real, because your nervous system runs down your spine. So it's like a big telephone pole. It's also the way black magic can work. If someone has a nefarious intention towards you, this plant is very helpful in sorting out the problem. But on paper and medically, what it does is it strengthens and relaxes ligaments and muscle tissue, which as you get older becomes more important. Anyway, that's all right. The next slide comes along, hopefully. So this plant, this is an incredible, this is just clove, right? Got it in the kitchen. Cloves look, if you look at them really carefully, especially in the botanical picture, it looks a bit like a tooth on a root. And this plant will cure a toothache, like it bloody works. It'll work well enough to get you to the dentist if you just chew on it, and it anesthetizes and disinfects the area, and it looks like a little tooth. All righty, next one, nettles. Okay. Now, sometimes the doctrine of signature relates to the landscape that the nettle is growing in. So nettles really like skanky water. They're like really kind of polluted areas. And nettles are really good at purifying blood and cleaning crap out. They're also good at, they've got a high level of protein content in them. And they are good at, they're really good at cleaning up tissue that's manky and scrappy. Okay, and they also, just go back one for a minute. So the next healing principle that is helpful to remember is the doctrine of similars. And what that basically means is, like homeopaths use this idea, like cures like. So nettles really, if you hang out, thanks, Madeline. Hang on now, thrown me off my game. I'm trying. Hang on, just bear with me a minute. All right, okay. Doctrine of similars, like heals like. Okay, so nettles are stinging. They'll hurt you. Like if you get stuck with one, you'll get a nice, lovely rash. Annoying. But this herb also cures rashes or deals. Like if you have a rash, you take a plant that gives you a rash, and it goes away. Okay, then the next slide comes along. Okay, the next doctrine, because there's the doctrine of similars, there's a whole discipline of homeopathy that describes how it works. But there's also a doctrine of polarities or opposites. And so lavender oil is a pretty good cure for a burn, maybe not a third-degree burn, and the reason for that is it takes heat out of the body. It comes from the mint family. Mint is generally cooling, but the next slide, hopefully. But rosemary is also from the mint family. The mint family is defined by having leaves that are kind of opposite each other, and also a strange attribute of a square stem. If you have a look at it, it's a box stem. I think in most cases in the mint family, there might be one or two that aren't. It's just the weirdest thing. I'm sure someone with knowledge of sacred geometry would say a lot about that. But rosemary is a mint, but it warms. So it's kind of weird. So you can, if someone's cold, you give them a warming herb. If they're hot, you give them a cooling herb. Simple way of prescribing. Okay, then we have, the doctrine of specific medicines. So there are herbs that do specific jobs, and yellow dock's growing everywhere in the world. And the leaves are quite big, and I think they used to be used in Ireland to wrap butter. But yellow dock is the cure for acid reflux. Now, why do you have acid reflux? Well, that's a big question, because a lot of people have this, especially as they get older. And the cause of it's actually quite complicated. It's usually emotional and psychological, as well as sometimes spiritual. But yellow dock is the herb that I was taking for years and years and years, and it digs up things that are hidden from your white sand self. So it helps you bring information from the black sand part of you into the white sand part of you. So this is a very good herb to remember. So if you have acid reflux, trying to figure out why it can have layers to it. All right, the next one. Agrimony. Agrimony is one of the ingredients in rescue remedy, I'm pretty sure. This herb is indicated for shock. If you've got, and this happens a lot with people on their healing journey and just in life in general, it happens to kids a lot all the time. You have a shock, no one pays any attention, and you get your breath caught in your throat or your lungs. And then if that goes on for too long, people will end up with muscle tension and they'll end up with a very tense body. This is the herb that gets you out of that. And it really does. And you might have to give someone drop doses every couple of hours. Sometimes when it's very bad, it'll drop off though. It helps get the breathing going again, calm the person's nervous system down. It's very good for that horrific anxiety. A lot of people come into my clinic with anxiety, freak out in the first time I meet them. So I just give them a dose of Agrimony and it usually sorts it out. Thank you, Agrimony. Okay, here's Comfrey. Oh, Comfrey. I've got a good story about Comfrey. Comfrey is the herb to knit stuff back together. There is not a wound that exists that Comfrey will not seal. And the story I have about, I used to do it martial arts, which in some ways was a bit of a disaster, but I got to know the teacher who was quite old and had no cartilage left on his knees. He was also quite a passionate person. And anyway, I wanted to make friends because I really needed to learn some of his skills. So I made a poultice out of Comfrey and got him to put it on his knees for about a week. And it totally regrew the cartilage in his knees. Oh. Yeah, I know, amazing, right? Like this plant's incredible. But Comfrey will knit lots of things back together again. It's like, because when it works physically like this, it will also work psychologically and spiritually. But you need to make friends with the plant and then get the plant to say, I can help with that, or you talk to the plant like you would talk to a friend. So that's Comfrey. I know. Plantain, ribwort. This plant's incredible. Man, this plant, this plant's all over the world. Like you throw a stick and you find this plant. Plants also pop up where they're needed. The earth throws them up. And that will even work if you're on a bushwalk somewhere and you get bit by something, it's good to be prepared. Yes, it's great to be prepared, the white sand part of you. But if you are out there in the bush and something weird comes along, like, snake or, strays full of things that are there to teach you, have a look around, see what the earth's got to help you, because this plant can't venom. It will, now I can't promise, but its job is to pull things out that shouldn't be there. So you can use it by grabbing a leaf, chewing it up, sticking it on your sting. I've done that many times. I've done that on a whitetail bite. And those things are rotten. And it worked. It pulls out splinters. It pulls out things that are not supposed to be there. So that works on levels as well.
The whitetail for our overseas friends is a spider.
Nasty. Well, no, I mean, the spider's fine. It's just you've got to be very cautious with yeah, you just and okay, that is.
I remember as a kid running to the bush and picking those things off and turning it into a shoot to each other.
I mean,
take the seed, stem, and then you can turn the stem over itself, and make it really tight on the stem. Then you go ping the other to each other. But I love it. Good old Aussie bush humour. Throw a stick and you'll find it. Just for people overseas, that's our way of saying you'll find it anywhere.
Oh no,
there's one.
And in Australia, where you've got lots of things that can bite you, this plant might just save your life. And I have heard of someone who's used this plant to deal with the black widow bite as well. Another spider. And this plant's just very mild but powerful plant. Okay. All right, this one we got up. Milk thistle. There's a million liver herbs in the world. The liver, all organs are important, but the liver is particularly important. This herb can rebuild your liver. And if you've got cirrhosis, it can correct the tissue distortion in the liver. If your liver's not working or it's not working efficiently, you're likely to be having a lot of intense emotion that you can't handle. So this herb, treating the liver is a really easy way to help someone with a whole range of things. Like, because the liver's like a waste disposal unit, it's like a pharmaceutical processing plant. It's got lots of dirty blood going into it's a really important organ. All organs are important, but the liver's really important. Makes hormones, gets rid of hormones, breaks them down, does lots of jobs like that. This herb will rebuild your liver if needed. Okay, and the next one, hawthorn. This is a plant that belongs to the rose family, and you can sort of see the similarity with the flowers there. This herb will rebuild hearts. I have not found a condition with a heart that does not respond to this herb. It's if someone will let you use it. People who've got heart problems often have trouble with trust and hope and love. They can't receive love sometimes. So this herb rebuilds heart defects as well. Like, it's just an incredible herb. Hawthorn. Hawthorn's also protected by fairies, and so if you happen to find a tree like this, just you have to be it grows into a tree. You want to be respectful of the spirits that guard the plant. Like, don't move it. So in fact, all trees you would want to talk to, because herbs are good, they're awesome, but trees have a lot more to say, and yeah, they're a bit more chatty. They're harder to engage though. All right, now we're going to move on to, okay, this is the first herb you learn on the herbalist path. So this knowledge I'm trying to resurrect about herbs used to be orally transmitted, I'm pretty sure. And the only legacy we have of this knowledge is in the scientific or the Latin name for the herb, which points to a myth, or can do, not always, but sometimes. So mugwort, not a very hot name, her scientific name is Artemisia vulgaris, and ivermectin is made out of a cousin of Artemisia. It's a different kind of Artemisia. This plant is the plant that will teach you how to dream. It will teach you how to enter the dream time, how to work with dreams, how to stalk, how to hunt, and all those skills are really important in learning to how to walk through the dream time. So mugwort, it's not a very good name. Let me try and, so Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo, and she never married. She was a virgin hunter, and she oversaw things like midwifery, the health of women and children. She's a pretty cool character. To move through the dream time, it's hard to explain this in words, but when you get the feeling of balancing the white sand part of you with the black sand and moving your attention into the water of the dream time, there's a poise aspect of this, a focusing and a soft focusing. It's extremely hard to explain in words. You have to kind of do it. But Artemisia was an archer, and the feeling you get from learning how to shoot a bow and arrow is the same feeling of the kind of poison.
If I could add, that's a beautiful way of putting it. It sharpens your focus.
Certainly, yes, yeah, very much. It's like a sharpening and a softening at the same moment. Yeah. It's like it's very
aware of 360 degrees.
Yeah.
Focus is sharpened where you need to turn your attention to. It's like what you need to track.
Oh, thanks, Anne. Good question. Thank you. So everyone's so helpful.
I can't see the questions, so I'll have to leave it to you to respond to them.
So the traditional way to take Artemisia, this is the first herb you learn after you've learned all the basic functions, the specific medicines of herbs. And when you're ready to move into the essence, you smoke it. So you dry the herb and you smoke it. And it's apparently, I don't know if this is true, but it's apparently the only herb you can smoke that won't damage your body. I mean, only substance if you take too much of it. Now, I don't know, who knows if that's true, but that's what I was told by one of my teachers. So, yeah, you smoke it, dry it and smoke it. You can also take it as a tea, but it's not as strong. But this herb will, and after you get to know the herb, you can just go and talk to the plant. So I had some mugwort in my front garden where all the medicine herbs are. And she likes to take over. She's a bit of a, she can't really keep it in her hands, you know. She just sort of wants to take over. She's got runners. And I said to her, now look, I need you to be respectful of the other plants because we don't have enough room. So she sort of sulked and just didn't come up that year. And then she came up. Then anyway, you can talk to plants and they will do things after a while. They'll listen to you and it's like a relationship. So it's so weird. Anyway, all right. The next plant now. Okay, cedar. Oh, this plant is a tree, obviously, and its Latin name is current Latin name is Thuja occidentalis, but it used to be called Arbor Vitae, which means tree of life in Latin. And this tree is probably the second most important. Well, they're all important, but this tree is very important to get to know because the Native American Indians, because there's more cedar on, not on Australian soil, because the eucalypt kind of do this job for us, I suspect. It's like a telephone pole to the ancestors. And this tree, so if you're having trouble accessing the ancestors, you can use cedar. And everybody has ancestors. Man, there are generations of beings standing behind you that have got wisdom and knowledge. They want to help. So this tree, you could smell the oil. You could there's tinctures. Just take this tree anywhere you can. Go and sit under it. Just dream about it. just imagine talking to us. Waft the cedar under your nose before you go to bed. You will speak to the ancestors. They will come and talk to you. All right. In Australia, the tree of life, I think in Indigenous tradition, is the fig tree. And the bunya pine is the tree of knowledge, which I don't have photos of, but trees are really important because they have a very big spirit, and sometimes they house spirits of like medicine people that have passed on. And I've met quite a few medicine teachers in trees, so they're good to get to know. So if you can get to know cedar will introduce you to other beings in the plant kingdom that you might need, you know, because they know each other.
Yeah, so while we're on the subject of trees, just as another example, our spirit people go into the trees where you know something of disturbance is happening, or even something that needs observing in the dream time. They will actually go into the trees, and so they're sitting in the trees rather than on the ground that you might, you know, 3D world think that's happening. The spirit is actually in the tree.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. I have needed help from trees in my, because when you start working in the dream time, you can change things. You start to acquire different kinds of power and learning and responsibility, because with every gift there comes a responsibility. So the challenges you face become, well, you need help, you need allies, you need friends, you need guidance. So trees have huge knowledge, they're massive books. Anyway, this one's a good one, cedar, and it's very pleasant.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, we've got the next most important herbal myth. Okay, yarrow. So if we look at yarrow's scientific name, it sort of sounds like Achilles, and it is. And then so there's not much that yarrow can't heal, man. It's got such a long, if you have no other herb you work with, this herb would probably do something for whatever ails you. It's a herb that helps restore the warrior archetype, I would say, on a spiritual level. And you need to travel in the warrior archetype sometimes, because you need the support of all the ancestors and those that have gone before you, that have walked that path. Warriors are impeccable. They never break their spirit, and they maintain integrity, poise, and honor at all times. But they're also skillful. So Artemisia can teach you how to be lithe and agile and move through the dream time. And yarrow will patch you up when you fall apart. So the thing that yarrow is best known for is the second scientific name there is millefolium, which refers to like 1,000 or 1,000,000 little leaves. And if you look at the tiny wee leaves on the branches there, the way you use the herb is you dry the leaves and they become a powder quite easily. And if you put that, you can put that powder on anything, in a tea or on a wound, and it will stop the bleeding, heal up the wound, disinfect the wound. You know, oh God, there's not much. It will deal with flu. There's hardly anything. Maybe it might not remove parasites, but I'd give it a crack anyway. You never know. Like there's a lot.
This would be definitely in any bush medicine kit.
Oh, for sure. And I don't know what the Aboriginal equivalent for this would be, but there would be. It may. I don't know if it's Indigenous to Australia. I know that there are many Western herbs that are found here in some form, like the elderberry, which I haven't got a picture of, but it's a really good children's medicine and flus and colds and things like that. We in Australia they have a white elderberry, but it's basically the same species. So, all right, now I feel like I'm feeling a sense of rushing. Oh yes,
you need a break. We can have a break.
No, I'm okay. I just because the herbs are actually quite conscious and they've been waiting. They love talking to people. You see, they feel a bit neglected, so they're all quite excited and they want to give you.
Oh, they're all rushing in on you. Okay.
So they're giving a bit of a warning. Now this plant's called Queen Anne's lace. It grows by the side of the road and it looks a bit like yarrow. It's not poisonous, and the way you figure out that it's not yarrow is you look for the dot of blood in the middle of the flower head.
Oh, how interesting.
And yeah, it grows all over Australia too. This plant, and it's got hairy legs if you look just at the bottom of the stem. So Queen Anne's lace has hairy legs, and she pinpricked her finger, and there's a drop of blood on the flower head. But the main thing this plant, I'm like, what does this plant do? It's trying to talk to me all the time. The seeds of when the flower heads turn into seed, they turn into things that look like a bit like a bird's nest. From the bird's nest, you can take a handful of seeds, and they're really good contraception, like the pill. How about that? Just in case you wanted to know that. All right. Won't poison you, but the next plant, hemlock, like so. This plant is incredibly dangerous. This plant is a power plant, and and I had a problem in my life for a while, and this plant mysteriously showed up on my property, just showed up. Anyway, we won't say too much more about that, but you can tell this is hemlock because of the bruising on the stems from all the people she's murdered. That's how you know. Don't touch this plant without gloves on. It will kill you. So
there's a plant in North America.
Yeah,
we had to be careful of touching. I just can't remember what it's called.
Hemlock grows all over the place. Like it grows like by the side of it. It tries to protect the land. Is what it's really trying to do. So it grows on like, you know, waterways. It likes to be near water, but in kind of moist areas. But yeah, this plant is deadly, man. Good friend though.
We talk to it.
Yeah. No. She asked why she's showing herself to you. Like there might be a reason. All right. What's the next one we've got? Peppermint. Okay, peppermint. This is another reference to a myth from the ancient world. So this plant was originally the nymph Mintha, who became a lover to Hades. And then there's various versions of this story. One of them is that Persephone got jealous and ripped the plant to pieces. But the other one was that, anyway, somebody turned the nymph into a plant, and this is the plant. And so it was either Hades or Persephone. There was a big fight. The story, it's really hard to resurrect myths that have been changed and distorted and reported by lots of different writers. But the main attribute of peppermint is that it can, if you are cold, it will make you warmer, and if you are warm, it will make you colder. So it can adjust temperature according to what your body needs. And it's pretty good if you're feeling a bit of premenstrual tension, have a bit of peppermint tea just before you have a period, and you'll feel a lot better. Some people hate peppermint though. Anyway, that's a very quick one. Okay, Tulsi. Now this plant is an amazing plant. Okay, let's try. I've got to rev up for the telling of this story. This plant is worshipped in India, and it's associated with devotion. Okay, then I'm going to tell you this. I'll try very hard to tell the story where this comes from. So Tulsi used to be a woman called Brinda, who was a devotee of Vishnu, And Vishnu is like a representation of the male principle in Indian mythology and is known as the preserver. So he preserves harmony, structure, creation. Now, for whatever reason, Vrinda married Jalandhara, who was the king of the demons. And that's a whole complicated creation story, which I'm not going to go into. But because Vrinda was a devoted wife, she would pray for Jalandhara and kept him safe. And he was a little bit arrogant. So he thought, oh, he got it into his head that he'd just take over the world. So he went to war with all the other gods and because of her devotion, he was protected in battle. So he ended up taking over heaven, earth, and the netherworld, which was a disaster because the creation was under the control of the king of the demons, basically. So what to do? Vishnu said, I need to do something about this, but I can't betray Vrinda, who is my devotee. But anyway, he decided to do it anyway. So he dressed up as Jalandhara and went to her palace and essentially tricked her into sleeping with him, which broke her status as a chaste and virtuous wife. And Jalandhara then got killed. It's a bit of a disaster. And then his head was brought to her at the palace, and she looks at Vishnu, who looks like Jalandhara, and says, well, who are you then? And then he takes off his disguise, and she's devastated. Dreadful. So then what happens? She curses Vishnu, and he accepts the curse because she was his devotee. Because I know it's getting complicated right about now. I've tried to figure it out so many times. He accepts the curse and creation becomes chaotic. It's a bloody disaster. And then all of the gods come beg Vrinda to take back her curse because everything's going tits up. And she says, okay, fine. So she takes back the curse, but then she can't live with herself because she's betrayed. Like, it's all a bit of a complicated. So she puts herself on a fire, and that's the end of that. And then there's a pit of ash, and then Vishnu turns out of the ash. He makes a plant called Tulsi grow, and he names it Tulsi. So that's the story of Tulsi. But then to illustrate how the essence of Tulsi works, I have another story very quickly. So Krishna, now we're at Krishna's palace. Krishna's a bit like the Christ self. And Krishna, we'll just sort of park this for the moment, seems to have a lot of wives. So we'll just sort of tolerate that and keep going. And of his wives, there are two that are worth in the story. One is called Satyabhama, who's very beautiful and very young and very wealthy and wants to be the most desired wife. And then there's his first wife called Rukmani, who is most devoted. Anyway, Sage comes along to the palace and says, I've got an idea. I can help you become the most loved wife, Satyabhama. And she goes, oh, good. I want to be the most loved wife. And so the sage says, yes. Well, what you can do is you can give me Krishna. You can just give him to me. And then you can earn him back by giving all your wealth. But of course, the cost of Krishna, he had to be weighed and worth your weight in gold and all that sort of kit. So off they go do the ceremony, make the deal. So Krishna hops on the scale, and Satyabhama starts piling up her wealth, thinking, oh, I've got so much money, no problem. It's going to be pretty easy to balance the scale. But so she starts putting on gold and jewels and money, and the blood scale doesn't tip at all. And it's just that she keeps piling on all until she hasn't got any wealth left, and the bloody scale hasn't moved, not even a bit. So she's panicking because if she can't buy him back, Krishna then belongs to the sage. It's a bit of a hot mess. So then she goes, oh no, what will I do? So she goes to the back to Rukmani and says, what are we going to do? I've just sold our husband. And what will I? She's the most devoted wife, remember? Anyway, so Rukmani goes very calm and says, not to worry. So she says, I'll come and see what's going on. And as she's leaving the palace, she picks a leaf of Tulsi and goes to where they're weighing Krishna. And she puts the leaf on the other side of the scale. And of course, the scale balances. And then Krishna says, oh, wow, I'm not going to be a slave to the sage anymore. And then Krishna says to Satyabhama, take back your wealth. And she does. She starts taking her back. And each time she takes something off the scale remains balanced. And that is the power of Tulsi. But what Tulsi is really good at doing, because she's basically a goddess, or a goddess archetype, or an essence archetype, however you want to describe it. what she's good at doing is retrieving souls and soul loss and parts of you that has been lost to the netherworld or somewhere where you are not. And this is a part of healing too. There are people who have had their soul taken for various reasons, which is difficult. And this is the only medicine I know of that will work on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're into myths, legend, lore. So
yeah, well, I know this works because I've used it. So I'm absolutely 100%. You have to make friends with the plant, but this plant is, there's truth to what I'm saying because I've experienced it. Okay, but let's race on. We'll say goodbye to Tulsi for the moment. Aha, the power plants. Okay, so we've all heard of ethnogens or hallucinogens, and I've got a couple depicted here. So the first one's Amarita muscaria, the red mushroom. And the reason I've got a picture of Santa Claus underneath it is because you see how Santa Claus has got a red coat and white trim?
Oh.
Well, so the way you take Amarita is you give it to reindeer who like it. They digest it and make and process the mushroom for you. And then you collect their urine. Then you heat their urine and then you drink it and you can have a safe trip. But otherwise it'll poison you. So that's what we think, that's where Santa Claus and the reindeer flying around comes from.
We might not tell that one to our kids yet.
No.
As adults, we'll hold it.
I'll tell you why you might need a power plant, or why some people might need a power plant. The next one is psilocybin mushrooms. These grow, as soon as you pick them, you become a criminal, but whilst they're in the ground, they're okay. They have a little skirt on them, and see that blue pigment at the bottom, that's what you're looking for. They grow in just before winter. I think you should find them. They're like wood piles. They last for a couple of days and then they disappear. But if you're walking around and you find these mushrooms, they're waving at you, and they're giving you, it's a kind of gift. You don't need to take them, but it's something is trying to help you. And what is trying to help you? Something's trying to help you make a bridge between the white sand and the black sand, because that's what these plants do. And the last one is cannabis. Of course, we all know about cannabis. Cannabis is a hell of a healer, is what I will say. But because it's a power plant, if you don't deal with a power plant with respect, it will take your power, which is not good. Because then you have to fight the plant to get your power back. So it's a bit of a disaster. So you have to approach these plants with the stance of a warrior. And if you don't, they will take your spirit. So you get one go at that. Righto. Okay. Now, this one's a power plant. This is an Australian tree. I thought this tree was the last plant that wanted to get in on this conversation. Oh man, this tree is probably the most dangerous tree in the world. And it lives in Queensland. It's all over Queensland. It's called the Gympie stinging tree. It's got heart-shaped large leaves. It's got these tiny wee needles on it. It looks like the way it presents on that kind of scrub territory. It does show up in rainforests a bit, but it's also in that more sparsely scrubby sort of landscape. I discovered this Gympie stinging tree when I was about 6, having a wee, trying to have a wee under the tree. And the ranger who was taking us on a walk said, "Imogen, stop! What are you doing? Don't move!" If you brush up against this tree, it will inject neurotoxin into your body that will be with you for the rest of your life. These little filaments you can't get out of your skin, and it creates a burning sensation. It's part of the nettle family, this tree, I think it is. So it works like the little stinging nettle I told you about earlier. There is an antidote to this, but this tree is a powerful teacher. And if it was used as punishment in Indigenous culture, like serious punishment, you would never forget the lesson. So this is a very, just be careful of this tree in Queensland. It's very, very powerful. And it's probably got something, if you meet it, it's got something to tell you. So it'd be good to listen to what it's trying to tell you. But
Wow.
be cautious around this tree. It's not a bad tree. It's just, you know.
It has a purpose. It has a purpose like every plant.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
righto. Okay, thank you, Gimpy String Tree. Okay, these we're onto my herbal heroes plants. These are plants that have facilitated some amazing event, like really before your very eyes. So I had an elderly client who, you know, like many elderly people, have heart conditions, and it was a hot day and she wasn't very good at drinking water. And she was in my office and I had a few herbs around in the office and she started to have a heart attack. I was like, oh, and I literally thought, I've got a full day booked. I don't have time to call the ambulance. What am I going to do? So I said, herbs, help, quick, someone. And lemon balm jumped off the shelf and I gave her a few drops and it stopped her heart attack. Now, I can't promise that'll do it for everybody, but so lemon balm's a cooling plant. That's why it worked. But I did find some references much later in books about lemon balm doing something similar. So anyway, yes, that works. All right, next one. Now, this is a plant you'll find in North America. It's a Native American Indian medicine, and this plant, arrowleaf balsam root, looks a bit like a sunflower, a little bit. It's got those really big arrow leaves there. I saw this plant in a dream first. I learned about it from a Native American Indian herbal medicine teacher, but because it's not growing in Australia, it was hard to use and get to know. But you can get to the point where you're so good at walking into the dream time that you don't need to meet the plant in person. You can meet them in the dream time. This is what happened with this plant. And this plant conveys invisibility, but it does it in a way, like not like you're wearing an invisibility cloak. You're kind of there, but you look like a shrub. People just aren't interested in you. And I'll tell you the story of how this plant worked. I had a client who was a mum and had a child, and she had a husband who was trying to kill her. Not good, very difficult. So mum got a job in another place, went there, and he tracked her, basically. So the situation came to crisis a couple of times, and each time I asked this plant to protect her, and there was a car chase, and she lost him both times. And that's not a very dramatic way of explaining how this plant works, but I know it works because this guy was out to get her. This stuff happens, it's not good. And sometimes you have nothing that the law can do to help. So in this case, I ask for help from the herbs. And this plant hid them both. That, like, he drove past and didn't see them. And it happened a few times, so it wasn't just one time. Anyway, situation is now permanently resolved. Everybody's well, and there's legal structures in place now that can stop. So it's settled down. But when it was coming to crisis and on the boil, this plant was the hero.
Fantastic story. I remember it.
Sorry. All right. Next one. Okay, so everybody knows dandelion. You just think that this plant's incredible. Like you just see this plant, you think, oh, dandelions, how annoying. No, they're amazing medicine. When I first moved to my house about, it was 15 years ago now. When I got here, the place was covered in dandelions. I'm like, oh man, I was trying to weed them and all that. I didn't really understand as much about the medicine now. But so I started to talk to the plant and I said, can you not grow on my property? And within about 6 weeks, they'd all disappeared. That was awesome. But they did say, they gave me a gardening talk. Well, we need to fix the nitrogen in this. I didn't understand what they were talking about. So then another plant who looks a little bit similar, called a cat's ear, showed up. Anyway, righto. Dandelion. Now, what's dandelion's special gift? This cleansing. You're not going to believe this. So I'm a psychologist. I treat people with mental illness. And a really common and difficult issue to deal with is bipolar. It's a real bugger. People with bipolar can't control their moods. They often act out. They do crazy things. They can't control sexual urges. It's really hard for them. And they talk like you would not believe. Talk and talk and talk. Well, dandelions are like this as well. It's go on and on. And dandelion will manage bipolar. It is the most incredible thing you can ever imagine. Yeah, it bloody will. You need a tincture or a capsule, and the person needs to keep taking it. But even the most worst case of bipolar, if I've given the person a drop in the session, they will immediately calm down. Mind will immediately clear, because people with bipolar race. They can't slow down, bless them. So this herb will help with that. And I think it also, and I can't explain why, I think it also cures plantar warts, but I haven't quite figured out how to get it to do that. So maybe someone else can have a crack at that and tell me what happens. Anyway, but yeah, dandelion, not a word of a joke, will manage bipolar. Like, it's you won't believe it until you see it happen. I didn't, but it does, and I've done it over and over and over again. The problem is the person with bipolar thinks they're cured, and then they don't keep taking it. So it does work, but okay. All right, next one. We're nearly there. We're almost at the end. All right, false unicorn. This is another Native American Indian. And this plant is so amazing. It's like hunted. That's how amazing it is. This plant will repair ovaries and the uterus. You got an injury to an ovary, so therefore it's a brilliant plant for women and for couples are having trouble conceiving. Yes, Susan. Yeah, it does. This plant, so I had my big story with this is, like, every woman who's ever come to me who wants to conceive, and I've used this plant on, has become pregnant within about 6 months. But on the subject of infertility, you want to look to the daddy person. If women are coming in and not getting pregnant, there's usually some kind of fear or reluctance or issue on the part of the daddy person. So you want to get them both in. But anyway, this plant seems to be able to move the way for children to arrive on the planet.
Wow.
If there's a problem. And it just does it in a really subtle, gentle way. And there was only one case where that didn't happen, and the woman concerned decided she didn't want to become a mother. So it resolves that question mark for people. All right, next one. This is another Native American Indian herb called scorevine. Well, that was the name I was taught to call this herb, but I think it might be called partridge berry now. I don't know. The Native American Indians had a brilliant understanding of herbal medicine and they were really good at women's health as well. And this herb it's just the indications for it is for young women for their first baby. And I have used this herb on, I get a lot of women in my practice who are pretty intelligent and pretty uncomfortable with the physicality of being a mother and the change in life that it brings. And some of them are really resistant to the birthing process. And I had one mother who this was very successful on, who's having her second child. And her first birth was a nightmare, because birthing experiences can be terrible. And it's really frightening for the woman concerned if she's, wants to have another baby. But this herb, first baby's birth was, she wanted to have a home birth, went terribly south. Had to be emergency cesarean taken to the hospital, very traumatic birth. She was terrified of having another baby but really wanted to, so that's a hard place to be in. Anyway, I gave her this for about 6 months and baby arrived nice and easy. Fell out. And that's what this herb does.
Right.
I know, so she's a really good one. And then the last herb I've got to talk about is one everybody knows, chamomile, but there's two kinds of chamomile. The common name for them is German chamomile or Roman chamomile. You want to use the German chamomile, which is Matricaria, which refers to mothers. This plant is really good for dealing with any baby mother issues. You could have an adult person who's stuck being a baby for some reason. This herb will fix that up. Or you could have anything around the issue of being a baby, being dependent, like stuff around not being cared for or not being protected, or a rupture between even a relationship between you and the earth. This herb will really help with that, to restore that bond. And you can ask the herb, you can say, please help me with this issue, or the herb will work it out. Herbs are quite clever. Chamomile basically soothes all babies of all ages. and any baby stuff that didn't happen when you were a kid that's still lingering in some form now. So it'll fix all that. So that, and then I've got one more slide, and then I think we're done. So to those who are sincere, if you are a sincere, honourable seeker and you speak directly from either the white sand or the black sand or the water, wherever you're at and trying to build that self that can move in the dream time, to those who sincerely ask, the ancestors will always listen. They walk with you. One of the elders that taught me said, Imogen, there is no place on this land that our ancestors have not walked. There is nowhere that is not known to us. And the ancestors want to help you. They want to help the world. And you're going to need the power of the warrior in the coming days. You're going to need to be able to dream, not just for you, but for people who can't dream. You're going to need the medicine of the black swan, because there's going to be conflict. There needs to be dialogue, and we have to slow down and stay in the conversation to rebuild culture. The culture waits in potential in the water in the dream time, and it can be collapsed very quickly. But we have to bring everybody along, or as many as can be brought, but everybody is what the ancestors want. Everybody. That includes everybody, right down to the single cell organism, and even beings we think are inanimate. So I just thought this quote might be a good thing to leave it on. Walking, we have to walk forward like the kangaroo. We have to move forward. Kangaroos are always going forward. They can't go backwards. I'm listening in a deeper way. Suddenly all my ancestors are behind me. I just get a bit emotional. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands.
So beautiful. I'm getting emotional too. I can feel it. And why we say we thank the ancestors, why we call them in, why we pay honour and respect to them. Because as Imogen said, they've walked all over this place. They've been there before. And in the walking, it's our way of calling that they've travelled, or they're in that walking, they know that place and they know you. And they're here to help us. And we can imagine the ancestors, not just of the spirit world, but of the plant world, of the trees, all the guardians that are there in the dreaming. They're there. The ancestors are still there. And we speak from Australia because it's so potent and powerful here, being the first and oldest culture. But it's on every land. The technology of Australia is the same technology as every other continent. But what's different here, there are many differences, but one is that the entire place has been walked over. The entire place has been sung. The entire place has been loved. Every single bit of it. The rock, the droplet of water, the first bud in spring, the entire thing, the entire landscape is actually our dreaming. And so the dreaming tracks are how we make our way in our life. They teach us about which way to go and where not to go, which plants to walk past and which not to go. There's the right plants, the right medicine for you on your dreaming track. And that's going to be the theme through this whole course. I thank you, beloved Imogen.
Thank you, Grandmother. And thank you for your story, because without your story, I wouldn't have found a way to walk into parts of mine. So thank you.
You're welcome. Are we good to stop sharing now?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, that's me done.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I couldn't see any of the chat, but I'm hoping that you've all, if anybody needed a response, that the response has happened.
Somebody wants some books. I would say the best herbal and most accessible herbal medicine teacher is probably Matthew Wood's books. He was taught by a whole lot of different Native American, Indian teachers, and he has access to the dream time for the plants. And so if you read his books, you will find a way in.
All right. Perhaps we could get those details from you, Imogen, and Penny could send that out on an email.
Yeah. Okay.
They're asking for a copy of your slideshow.
Yeah, no worries. Just that's no problem.
That to happen. All right. So if you ever use any of that information, you must recognize and acknowledge Imogen and her ancestors. That's the right, proper way. So in the giving permission, that we acknowledge the teacher and her teachers and her teachers and their teachers. So one way to do that is to acknowledge the teacher and their ancestors. Yeah. It was just extraordinary. We want more, but it's like we're all a little bit stunned. I know I'm a little bit stunned about how important they are.
Oh, they love you so much, the plants. They're so sad that people don't talk to them anymore. But you talk to a plant, and so I had a lemon tree that was nervous. I'm started talking to them, come on, we can do it. I know this is going to be your year. You can do it. This kind of conversation with the plant, and then suddenly bloomed with a bit of a problem with the possum eating them flowers. But anyway, we worked that out. But the land will talk to you wherever you are. The field will talk. Anyway, great to spend some time with you guys. Hard to say goodbye, isn't it? But I'm gonna. If there's no more questions.
Well, let's open up for questions.
Okay.
Anyone like to speak? We'll bring those questions in there.
Good one.
I can't see. Is anyone?
Kitty's got her hand up.
Oh, thanks, Penny. Can you manage us?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, Penny.
Thanks, Penny. Thank you, Grandmother, and thank you, Imogen. Beautiful, amazing synthesis of lore and knowledge that's come through from you and your ancestors, and we all appreciate it so much from our hearts. I have just a couple of quick things. Essential oils, and when we're talking about the rose, I went and got my essential oil. There's been a little bit of controversy, I know, with some herbalists around essential oils. What do you think about that?
Okay, so the essential oil process of distillation is an alchemical extraction process. So I think the essential oils are very close to that essence medicine, and the way they work really is on the olfactory senses of the human body. So you can put essential oil on your skin, but it's not the most effective way to take it. It's actually the way it smells and what that conjures in your brain. So the other thing I would say, just have a go and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? Nothing. You just have to try something else.
And something else I noticed when we're using the scientific names for the herbs, because I love herbalism and I make my own all kinds of things.
Right.
And the scientific name I noticed for the nettle contained urtica. And the urtica, and you said it's good for hives, and urticaria is hives.
Yes, it is. That's a sneaky name to remind you of. Because I think that when the Victorians tried to catalogue all the plants, they got a lot of their information from oral traditions in the area, and this would have happened in the 1800s. So the names are a last clue of an oral tradition. But urticaria for sure. Give it a go. Sometimes it works really well.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's more complicated,
Yeah.
Because healing have layers to it. So the top layer might be just the hives, but if there's something underneath that, it depends on what's causing the symptom. There's sort of some part of you is dreaming it up. We have to figure out what that story is. So it can be not simple,
Now, you mentioned you're talking about the trees, and the cedar is the connector to the spirit world in North America. And for our Australian equivalent is the eucalypt. Did you mention a specific eucalypt?
This is a really complicated issue in Australia because it doesn't, I don't know why it's different. I think we've got to be careful of being too hard and fast. I think cedar will connect you more easily to your ancestors, not exactly the spirit world. There are other trees for that. But your ancestral line or the ancestral line of the place, it'll just help you hear from them more easily. But you probably also need the help of mugwort or artemisia to learn how to move into the dream cycle. So it's a skill. It takes time. You can have moments of clarity sitting under a cedar tree, but then you might not be able to take it with you. In Australia, it's not a direct comparison. Eucalyptus trees are used for many
They're used for different things. Yeah.
it's not a direct translation. Because also in Australia, the ancestors are everywhere. Man, they're everywhere. No, they run in, you go come out of the loo and you run into somebody.
Can I suggest that it would be a eucalyptus that's in your area? Make friends with it. That's how
start. Just have a go. Just have a try, see what happens.
Right. And something else, you mentioned the gimpy stinging tree. I came across some when I was in sort of subtropical rainforest or semi-rainforest in Gloucester in New South Wales. They have giant nettle trees. I mean, these trees, they look like trees. Are they? And there's signs warning us, don't go near these trees. Do the trees have a message? Because that's something that didn't sort of come, that you didn't mention. I mean, they say yes, stay away, but
I think there are things going on in the world that are hard to speak of unless you've got a certain level of initiation. So those trees are a big warning for something, but they're also protecting something. So if that tree is talking to you, take a trip with it and see what it will share with you. So that, because there are some things I can't speak of in this forum, not because I'm trying to be difficult or special, or it's just complicated. But the tree is trying to protect you as much as teach you. But what it's got to say to you, you have to go and ask the tree, and then the tree will say, wow, this is going on, and I want, whatever. But it's a big warning, like, be careful.
Nanga.
And Vanessa had her hand up after Kitty. Vanessa?
Thanks, Penny. Thanks, Imogen. That was such great information. So much to learn. Have to go over it a few times. But I follow this group called Frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance. They're from the US.
Okay.
So they've suggested an alternative to ivermectin, which is black cumin seeds, Nigella sativa.
Yeah.
And I just thought if you had any knowledge about that and how they might be connected, I don't know if you know anything about black cumin seeds.
I don't use black cumin seeds medicinally. I have heard of them. There's Nigella sativa, but I don't think they're a sage.
Oh.
I can't really answer that in any authoritative way. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I only brought it up because you mentioned that connection with that other plant.
The COVID thing's really hard. I think there's a number of ways you could tackle both an infection and the phenomenon. So it depends on which aspect of the pandemic you're needing support with. I think it seems to be a respiratory issue mostly, and I know that the World Health Organization said garlic would do nothing to help you, but garlic is really good at breaking up mucus in the lungs and elsewhere. And if you happen to have a infection where your lungs were filling with mucus, I would definitely take as much garlic as I could, because it breaks it up and helps you cough it out. But I think, the description of the actual infection itself is quite worrying, but so is the response to the you know, so it's quite complicated, but I would imagine that you'd need a bit more than Nigella seeds, just
Yeah.
when you and
Yeah, sorry, my connection was just cutting out.
Oh,
There are a lot of other things they recommend, you know,
Yeah.
for prevention and
Yep.
curing of it. And the main agent that works is ivermectin, but it's really been suppressed. So that's why they suggest the black cumin seeds.
yeah. Well, I mean,
And that's why I just wanted to.
if you, I mean, Artemisias are the wormwoods. They're basically wormwoods, and wormwoods, they're called wormwoods because they're good at getting rid of parasites. And
Yep.
so you could, I mean, if you had nothing else, I'd try any old wormwood you could find. But anyway.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right.
And-
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you should be able to get a wormwood somewhere. Yeah. Anyway.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah,
Gemma?
thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I missed being live. Imogen, that was amazing. And Grandmother Mulara, everyone, just blessed to be here. My feeling was to just sort of mention about trees and something that I have recently understood, but more from a scientific point of view, even though I know it inherently, innately, was about their shape being coming up and over, and then the roots down and under and up again into a toroidal flow. So I was hearing about this scientist who did experimentation on the sap, which actually goes against gravity. So so the toroidal, the torsion field that the tree creates a 0-point field and an anti-gravity, and that we can, when we're in the bush, can meditate and ask, when we create the bubble of light around us, can turn it, flip it inside out and get into that 0-point field. So I just wanted to share that because and just I have another question about quantum field of sort of connection and but just when you mentioned the warrior and the word itself, yarrow, around the other way is warrior.
Yeah.
Backwards.
Yeah.
And then also just with the other teachings that I do, you know, with other sort of global teachers like Grandmother Mulara and yourself, it all just flows into sync, like you were talking about the Hindu, and there's a particular teacher, Sandra Walters, who just recently spoke about the rose being from her celestial sort of connections the highest frequency anything on the planet.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And I just wanted to share, but there's so much, but thank you everyone. It's beautiful.
That's lovely. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Gemma. Anita?
Oh, turn yourself on.
You just need to unmute yourself.
First, I want to say thank you so much for that, what you teach us. And I want just to add, I saw a film about malaria and Artemisia. Do you know that Artemisia is able to heal malaria?
Yes, that would make sense. That would, I believe it would have a very good go at it. Yeah, for sure.
I just want to add it because they make, in Africa, I saw a film about it. Some people made this, especially the women, because the WHO forbid it in the 1960s. And they forbid the plant, they forbid to use it. So it's still hidden, used in Africa. But the people who know these women who live in some, backyard and work with this plant, they can heal malaria in between 1 or 2 weeks when the person is already sick. And still people die on malaria because it is still forbidden in Africa to use Artemisia.
She's powerful.
Pardon me?
She's powerful. She's like that. That would make sense to me. Yeah, that she would. Because
Anita, can you use the chat? Because we wanted to get the name, or actually if Imogen knows what it is, could you write it in the chat so that people can grab it? Because what I'll do is I can actually save the chat as well as the recording and send both out. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
Artemisia. Oh, malaria can be healed by that.
Okay, Kitty's popped her hand back up again.
Good on you, Kitty.
Just one more comment, everyone. After Imogen, after you had finished speaking about the rose, did anyone else, then your voice was completely clear through the whole of your teachings, but just when you spoke about the observer in the black sand, what your voice just did this little modulation and just changed for a moment. Did anyone else hear that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's hard to explain that concept. It's not clear where the observer sits. It's part of you that you can't access consciously until you've learned to swim in the water.
And if we use the dark water as like the morphogenic field, if we take away the physicality of it and move into that sea of consciousness, is actually the transition. Let's do that now together.
Okay.
So let's close with a little gathering. So if you just want to close your eyes and see yourself walking from the white sand, although I have a feeling that most of us are in that light blue water now. So we're in the light blue water with your feet on the sand. And we've just had this amazing experience of being in the dreaming. The plants have shown us their dreaming and how we can work with them. And so now take yourself forward. And as you come to the line of the black water, take a step forward, take a leap, let yourself go under and float into the dreaming space. Trust yourself. Trust the sea of consciousness to hold you. You are never lost. The ancestors have you. The grandmothers have you. We have you. Just allow yourself to float, uninhibited, totally free in that sea of consciousness. And what do you notice in your mind's eye? Just letting all of the plants and the teachings wash over you like that waterfall. So letting that wash over you. And which plant do you think speaks to you the most? Is there a plant that's calling? Allow them to come forward. Allow them to speak to you. What is their message? Allowing yourself to float. Allowing the message to come through from the unseen world. Dropping all attachment to any person, place, or thing. Floating. We've just had an amazing lesson from the plants. And they all fought to be there because they all had something to say to us. And there will be a plant that wishes to speak to you most. And so noticing that plant, and we will release the slides so that you can go back to it and do more research for yourself. Just checking in with the plant or plants, as the case might be, and thanking them now. In your mind's eye, you say, I am willing to form a relationship with you. I am so happy and blessed that Imogen has shown me a way to connect with and talk with you. And with that gratitude, feel the change in yourself. Feel that. It's expanding you, expanding, expanding, until you are the whole of that Lake Mackenzie. Whatever the original name was, from the Butcher people. Feel yourself being the entire black water. You feel it all up. And I'm going to ask you another question. As we held you in the dreaming, I'm going to ask this question each week. What is it that is most in your heart that you want to dream into reality? Just holding you in that space without thought, just holding you. Just allow your heart to speak to you, because the answer is in your heart. And I will want to know, the grandmothers want to know, what this dreaming is for you. What will you wish, desire? It's more than a want or a need. It's in the heart of hearts, in our eternal heart, in the dreaming. What is it that is the most important thing to dream in? It might be as simple as more love, more relationship with the plant kingdom and the plant queendom, more relationship with Mother Earth, more relationship with each other. Feel the truth of it. Expand into that. That's it. And we now just start to bring ourselves back. Start to bring yourself back. Just while you're still in the black water, just be upright now. Put your feet on the sand. But you're still in the black water, you see. You're still in the dreaming. And you can bring this with you. And it can be as easy as this to turn into, or to shift into rather, to shift into the dreaming. And all of what's been shared today, and all of what you have just experienced, bring that into you. Embrace it. Reach out and bring it all into you. For it is you. And we were all floating with you. Bringing that in. And thanking the teachings of today and the teachers of today, and taking that into your week to come. And we will be delighted to hear what the plants have been teaching you this coming week. Just bringing that in. That's it. And now starting to walk to the blue water. Walking to the blue, noticing the clear water at your feet, looking at your toes, give them a wriggle. Keep walking till you come out of the water onto the sand. Just giving your toes a wriggle, fingers a wriggle, just coming out of that And opening your eyes. Beautiful. It was a beautiful walk together with you. I should have done this housekeeping in the beginning, and I don't feel like doing it now, but one housekeeping was whether we wanted to switch to have an hour earlier, because Anita is currently on 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. in Germany. I know we have a WA person with us. It means it's an hour earlier for them, pretty early. But I'm suggesting that maybe we all start an hour earlier. I'll just put that out there. So could you let Penny know if there's any problem with that? I think we'll just leave it there. Particularly for Manal, who's in WA, and there might be some others. Okay. Without further ado, I'll close the circle. Thank you all for coming. Thank your ancestors. We thank the grandmothers, and we thank the teachers, the human teacher and the plant kingdom. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nanga, everyone. We'll see you next week. I'll just stop the recording. Ta-da!